Yeah, hi all. Welcome to another session of Market Reach in Accenture. So this is me, Accenture. So I'm a technical architect in MDC. I'm 18X certified. I'm active in Salesforce events. This is my LinkedIn URL, and this is the QR code for that. So you can feel free to connect with me and follow me on LinkedIn. To be updated on the future sessions, you can join the WhatsApp group. So this is the QR code for that. And suppose if you want to have one-to-one session with me, you can look it on TalkMate. And there's a YouTube channel also which I run, Market Reach with Accenture. So where this video will be also posted in. So you can feel free to like, comment, and share and subscribe to the important channel, important videos that you feel. So today session would be around like few of the questions. Like one of our group members had mentioned about few of the questions that were asked in the interview questions for Accenture. So the intent of this session is to cover those questions. So for not just for Accenture, but any other MNCs where these questions could also be asked. So whenever any company asks you these questions, like it actually, what actually defines what questions should be asked is how you introduce yourself. From there itself, that is the starting point. Like suppose if anybody tells you, like, tell me a brief about yourself, how do you pitch it? You have to tell it about, like, say for me, like, my name is Ankit Jain, so I'm a technical architect in MNC. My total Salesforce experience is around 10 years. So, and in those 10 years, like I got exposure of different clouds like Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, Experience Cloud. I worked on Asynchronous Apex. I worked on the regular controllers as well. I worked on the process builders, flows. I worked on the Asynchronous Apex, batch classes, queuable, batchable. I worked on the LWC components. I worked on the Aura components. I also got exposure on the Visual Force page in the early duration. So this could be a starting point, and then you can ask the father like if you want to talk about Asian project. That's how the interview typically goes. So after this, like if suppose the discussion comes in around like what is the profile in Salesforce. So if someone asks what is actually a profile, so you can tell that person like profile is actually a mechanism where we define what a user can do. Suppose there is a profile of, say, system administrator. System administrator has the power to do the create, read, edit, and delete, and other administrative permissions as well. So it is defining what that person can do. Without a profile, a user cannot exist. Each profile is linked to a Salesforce licenses as well. Like your system administrator is corresponds to your Salesforce normal profile. For Salesforce platform license, you can create your own profile as well. So likewise, like each profile is linked to a it's linked to a Salesforce license as well. Now it is a permission set. In initial days, like the role of permission set was to give additional access to a person. Like out of two persons, you want only one person to have an extra permission. So that was the use case for using permission sets. But down the line, like with the recent changes which Salesforce has recommended, Salesforce says like you keep the bare minimum in the profile and give all the object and field and permissions in the permission sets. In the profile, you can give the login IP hours, you can give the default record types, uh, and a few more permissions you can give it a profile. Rest all the things your normal object, field level. These are the very basic record type accesses as well. You would want to give it on the permission set only. We need to give only the bare minimum, like your app default, IP ranges, uh, login hours. Then you can set tab visibility as well. So these are the very few page layout assignments. So these are the very few things that you would want to configure at profile level. Otherwise, all the things you would need to configure in the permission set. Any questions so far? One additional point, like while defining a permission set, it is we have the power to define like whether this permission set will be linked to a license or not. Based on the licenses, you are able to set the different tab visibility as well at the permission set level. But that is only possible when you define the license of that permission set. Uh, so apart from these questions, another questions which our participants have asked is around the trigger recursion. See, recursion and trigger is a very normal phenomena. So to prevent that, there are various methods that are available. The very crude option is to create a static variable and reset it and apply the checks. Like if this very Boolean variable is set, then you don't call the trigger again. But the problem with that approach is like after 200 records, the value will get reset again. So your recursion would happen again. So, but to overcome that, the other mechanism that is available is to have a like a map of ID comma record and have a check like if those values have changed. Like suppose you would want to apply run a trigger only if a particular value say status is changed, then only you run that. You don't allow it to fall on other scenarios. So that is the best approach. And there are some other mechanisms as well, like which are available on the internet, which Apex Hours has mentioned in detail. In the interest of time, like I would not be able to cover all of it, but I can provide you the link around this. So the best way is to go with the right following the best practices and doing the comparison. Apart from that, the very crude is the static variable, like the Boolean variable, which I talked about. So to answer your our participants' question, like these are the different ways that we can do the things. Another question that came up with our participants is around like what are things that can be done only at the profile level and not the permission sets. So the very basic thing comes around is your default record type, your page layout assignments, your login hours. So if somebody asks, and this is actually a valid question, and many people have actually experienced this question in their interviews as well. So these you can talk about like start with the very basic talk about the page layout assignments. That's very simple to recollect. Like you can say like, but the other panel might say like for that there's an alternative of using dynamic forms like, and you can use one layout but have different sections visible as per your custom permission which you added in the permission set. So you can talk about default record type. You can talk about the app default. So these are the things which can be configured only at the profile level, but not at the permission set level. So we are going over to the next question now. What is a role? See, profile and permission set tells me like what I can do. Role tells me what are the things that should be visible to me. It gives me a, you can say a breadth of the records. So roles define like suppose there's a manager role and there's a agent role. So manager would have visibility of the child of the subordinates. So the higher role will have visibility over the lower role or subordinate roles. But there's a catch in your sharing setting or your OWD. The checkbox is checked for the standard objects like grant access using hierarchy where this role thing comes into picture. But for custom objects, you can define not to follow the grant access using hierarchy as well. And for few scenarios, there's a user you would not want to put a role on the user. When a user has access to too many records, like you can say data skew, owner-based ownership skew happens. So at that time, you would not want to have a role on the particular user. Is that fine? Any other questions? So the next thing is around what is the difference between list, set, and map. See, list is actually list of records, your list of IDs. In that, duplicacy can be available. So in the scenarios, and you would done means in normally list we use it for updating or inserting the list of records. Set is like you want to avoid the duplicate. But here as well, like for list of objects, you might not see like if a list of object, a set of objects being is able to add twice. What I mean is like you have say set of account, okay? Here like both would get added, so the sides of the set would be filled. You might say the name is the same, but you told me like only unique, it would have prevent duplicate. So the duplicate thing is taken care in this way, like yeah, the equals and hash code method. For custom objects or custom data type, you will need to override the equals method and the hash code method. These are from the object class. For primitive data types, this would work. Like suppose if I have a set of string, oops, if I check here the size, then still the size of the foods should be one only. Because these two are same. Like Salesforce is able to identify like these are duplicates because the equals and hash code method is configured in that way. Any questions so far? I take it as a no. Now we'll go to the last question part of this, like the map. See, map is special. I would say it's special because what map you can do is like you can have it like map nesting of map as well. From one ID, whatever things, from whatever key you would want to get a set of, you can say a value, we will use map in that regards. Key would be unique all the time. And yes, there's another misconception like you can't have a subject as a key, but that is possible, but we don't do it because it again it overall boils down to equals and hash code method. Like when Salesforce would try to add it as a second time as the key, it would not treat it as a duplicate and with due to which you might encounter an undesired behavior. So you can have normally prefer ID, keeping ID as a key, but you can also keep object as a key as well. Both are possible. Any questions on this? The next question is difference between with sharing, without sharing, and there's another inhibited sharing. What with sharing does is whatever records that are intended are shared with me through any mechanisms. Only those records will be visible to me when I'm querying the data. Suppose there are say 100 records in the org. I am owner of only 2 records. So if I have like with sharing, I would be able to see only 2 records. Assuming OWD is private. and there is no other mechanism through which records are shared. So in such scenario, when I do a query, and if the class is mentioned as with sharing, only two records will be visible. But suppose it is without sharing, all 100 records would come. Suppose it is inherited Sharif. I have used the keyword inherited. So from where it is called, it would take that context. But if nothing is specified, it would work as with sharing by default. And suppose I don't write with sharing, without sharing, or inherited sharing, nothing is mentioned. It would work as without sharing. Any question on this so far? Resume. So next is, what is the need of @test setup? @test setup we use because in most of the scenarios, when in one class we have operations related to a single or same object. So every time creating the test records in each method will be time consuming. And suppose for some reason there is a new field that you made required, or some default value you have to set. So you will have to make the modifications in all the methods. So if you use @test setup, there will be only one method which will be annotated with @test setup. So only one place you will have to make the change. Other places you will not be needing to make the change. Next question is around what is asynchronous Apex. Asynchronous Apex is actually like whatever operations you would want to run it in the background without blocking the user are called as asynchronous operations. Under asynchronous Apex, you have future method, you have queuable, you have batch classes, you have schedulable, you have sorry, queuable, uh, future method, like, yeah, let me just write it. First is you have the future method. Next is your batchable, batch classes. Next is your queuable, schedulable. If I'm not missing out anything, I guess. Yeah. So these are the four feature method. Three use cases it solves. First, if you want to do a call out in trigger, you use future method. Second, you use future method to avoid mixed DMA. Third, you would want to put a method in asynchronous. You want to run it in background, improving the user experience. So in these three scenarios, you use future method. A detailed session around the around the asynchronous Apex is available on our YouTube channel. So I will just send the link in the group. Also on the Apex collections, it's available. Now yeah, I was talking about the batch classes. Batch classes are used to process large number of records. And if you want to overcome the regular limit, in such scenarios, we do with batch classes. In batch classes, you have three methods: start, execute, and finish. Start method, there are two variants, I would say. One is your database.query locator, and other is iterable. Database.query locator we use when we don't have the data with us, or the data that is therein is too much big, like which we would not be able to get in the regular Apex controller. We have the records more than 50,000 records. So we use database.query locator. Iterable we use when we have the data with us already and we want to do the manipulation of that. Or you want to do some have custom data type which you would want to iterate. So in such scenario, you go with iterable. Execute method is the method which gets called every time. Like whatever what it does means whatever start method does is it gets all the data. Now Salesforce internally breaks those records, whatever are coming in the start method into different chunks. And that chunk size is determined by Salesforce while we are calling the batch classes. Like database.execute batch, we pass the parameter. If nothing is mentioned, it takes 200 and maximum it can go up to 2000 records. The last is finish method. Finish method we do one like to do some tasks. Suppose like you want to send an email mentioning like these are the number of records which are processed successfully and these are the records which have failed. Or you would want to call another batch from the same batch. So in such scenario, we go with batch classes. Third is queuable. Queuable and future are kind of similar. Queuable is the slight enhancement. Like queuable, it accepts list of objects as a parameter. You can do the chaining in queuable, and the next part is like queuable. You are able to track to Apex async job. Last is just schedulable Apex. Schedulable Apex is like you want to execute a method or a class in fixed durations. So you use schedulable in that. Now the next is like what are decorators in LWC? Decorators, we have three decorators at the API, which we use to denote a public property. We normally use it for sending the information from parent to child components. Second is @track. @track was initially used to make the property as reactive. But as of now, Salesforce has made all properties as reactive. But for custom data types and arrays, we need to still need to add the annotation of @track. Third is @wire. @wire is used to get the data from Salesforce. So we can either call a Apex method in the wire adapter, or we can use the Lightning Data Service or GraphQL as well. @wire also there are we can use it as a normal property and we can use it as a function. And using it as a property, we don't pass any parameters, so it will call as a thing directly and get us the fixed set of data. But when we use it as a function, you can pass like dollar and the property name as the parameter, and whenever that property is changing, the @wire method will get called every time. This is explained well in the project as well, like which we already have recorded to-do list. The next is what are the different lifecycle hooks. So this starts with constructor, then we have the public properties @wire, then we have the connected callback, we have the rendered callback, then we have the disconnected callback, then if there are any errors, we have the rendered callback. So these are the ones. @future we already covered. Next is like, oh, can you do a callout with future method? By default, no. This is a misconception. Like everybody would say, like you do callout with future method, so it is allowed. By default, it is not allowed. It is allowed because we use @future callout equal to true. And we cannot call one future method from another. So next is on some best practices of using future method. Future method best practices you can say is to have like minimal make sure like the future method only accepts the list of IDs as the parameter and you don't pass object since it might become inconsistent. The other thing is like in the transition, like you have to make sure like only 20 times the future method gets called. I think that is the limit. Next is what is batch Apex. So we covered it during Asynchronous Apex. Next is what if the batches have 200 records and one record fails, what will happen? So what batch class does is like whatever records that are queried, it breaks it to different chunk. Now that individual chunk uh, would actually execute and see batch would create its child instances so that one instance would fail, but the others would still execute normally. The next question is what are the different types of flows? So we have the record triggered flow. Under record triggered flow, we have like fast field updates, which is your before flow. You have related actions and records, that is your after flow. You have stream flow. You have schedulable flow. You have flow orchestrator. You have platform triggered flow. I think these are the different kinds of flows that are available. Yeah, I forgot to mention around auto launch flow. Next is how is LWC different from Aura? LWC is based on web component framework, which is the default, which is the browser default framework, which is the web component which latest version store. So what LWC does is LWC is based on yeah. So the next thing is how is LWC different from Aura? So under this, the first difference is like LWC is much more faster because the translation time, like LWC already is based on browser native framework. So the translation time is very minimal. Second is it is more secure compared to Aura. Why I'm saying this? Because of the shadow DOM functionality. Like it prevents the inner elements to be accessed by the outer CSS and JS. Apart from this, you can say LWC offers more usability as well. You can call different means. You can modularize it much better. You can have different subset controllers for the child LWC components. Aura was like it's less secure and reusability is limited. So that's the difference. The next is around SeeAllData equal to true and SeeAllData equal to false. So SeeAllData, the configuration is available by Salesforce only because for few scenarios you have to take it like SeeAllData equal to true. I will tell you the use case. Suppose I want to in Apex, I have to check, I'm writing a test class where I need to check around like if a user is able to view a specific report or dashboard or not. So in such scenario, report I cannot create in my Apex test classes. So I will have to access the orgs data. So in such scenario, I will have to use your data equal to true. In other scenarios, it's recommended like to create your own data in your test setup and use it accordingly in your test classes. Next is around mixed HTML exception. Mixed HTML exception we get when we have a setup and a non-setup object being updated in the same transaction. And now what is the setup object? Setup objects are the objects which are dealing with the security things like profile, permission set, user. Non-setup objects are the objects which deal with the data like the regular objects data, transactional data, like your account, contact. These are your non-setup objects. So when you try to suppose you want to try to create a committee user, like a contact and a user object in the same transaction you want to do DML, you would get this mixed DML exception. Now, how do we avoid it? For avoiding that, you can for in the regular classes, we can go with @future method. If in the test class you're getting this error, you can also use system.run as, which provides a complete new context and you're able to avoid the mixed email exception. So, any questions so far? Like, I know, like, I didn't ask for each question, but that was in the interest of time. Yeah, if anybody has any questions, like I'm